Resident Evil 4 is one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time. I'm sure you didn't need me to remind you, but it's an important detail when discussing the Herculean task that is remaking this game. Capcom had to take a game that's known throughout the industry as one of the most influential games of all time and make it better, but on top of that, make it modern, and they had to do so without straying too far from the core design ideas that make Resident Evil 4 what it is. I think it's safe to say that for most gamers, they did exactly that. The reviews for the game have been glowing, and on social media you would need to go out of your way to find people that have issues with the game. Is this actually the case though? How much of these people's impressions of the remake are being influenced by the fact that the game has modern controls or looks visually stunning, and how many of these people even played the original? I'm not trying to say you need to play the original to have an opinion on the remake. What I'm saying is that the question of is this a good video game and is this game better than the original are two completely different questions. Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite video games of all time. So because of that, I went into this remake looking for the answer to the latter. The reason why I love the original game so much is because of the gameplay. A really easy way to describe the core gameplay would be simple yet refined. Nothing in the game is hard to perform or understand, but that gave Capcom a lot of room to further flesh out their ideas in a way that only added to the overall experience. This is something the remake does as well, and it's part of the reason why I think it's better, along with the core design changes that overall make the game more fun, especially when comparing high-level play. The updated control scheme is something that for a lot of people is a big reason why they prefer this remake over the original. The controls in the original are a huge part of the core design of the game. Enemies move and act the way they do because Leon can't move while he shoots, and the level design generally follows this philosophy that you can always see what's important directly in front of you. This helps the game keep a great pace, and you always feel like you're moving forward to see something new and progress through the game. The remake's decision to make the controls modern already makes these games inherently completely different, and there's something to be said about the originality of the original's controls over the remake's more generic control scheme. Even with that, I think it's really easy to see the appeal of being able to move your character a full 360 degrees, along with having a camera that doesn't feel like it's fighting against you. Even though the OG's controls are more original, I rarely see anyone bring up how it causes problems for the game, mainly to its balancing. Even on the highest difficulty, OG Resident Evil 4 is a pretty easy game when played optimally. For most games, getting good requires you to hone a particular skill, or maybe multiple. For Resident Evil, you just need to know information, and the game becomes incredibly easy. The obvious things are Leon's melee moves having iframes, or using the knife to save ammo, and just these two things alone go a long way in making the game easier. But then you figure out flash grenades instantly kill mutated enemies, and you can use the camera to instantly snap to wherever you need to look and aim. Any person who is mildly competent at video games should be able to very easily take advantage of these mechanics and take it to the extreme, and very quickly become an unstoppable machine who stuns and kicks everyone with an inventory completely full of ammo. This is compounded by the fact that recoil doesn't exist in the game, and most guns are aimed with a pinpoint red dot laser, so shooting people in the head isn't really a challenge at all, especially because enemies are pretty slow. Even though everything I said leads to the game being fun, I think it also leads to the game being unbalanced in a way that can heavily favor the player. Looking at the remake, Leon is still very capable, but playing at a high level on a high difficulty requires more from the player. One reason is because they changed the red dot system to a more traditional accuracy system that's in most third-person shooters. This makes guns have different recoils and spreads, and because of that, weapons feel even more distinct from each other. The perfect example of this involves the Red 9 pistol. In the original, it was the undisputed best handgun in the game because it did way more damage than the other pistols with no downsides. In the remake, it's still the most powerful handgun stats wise, but now it's also the least accurate. The Punisher still has a piercing effect, but another trait it has is having really low recoil. The Blacktail is basically a better version of the default handgun when upgraded, but it doesn't have the ability to have a red dot fitted on it like the default can. Along with more variety, aiming in general has a bit more nuance because guns have accuracy now. Moving and shooting along with weapon swapping feels great and makes the game flow smoother in between different actions, but standing still and shooting like in the original still has its uses, because standing still increases your accuracy. That being said, you'll have a harder time playing the game this way because the Ganados are way more aggressive. Gone are the days of people running up to you and stopping 4 feet away before making their next move. Now enemies who run up to you are doing it with a purpose, and this makes someone running up to you an actual threat that you need to pay attention to. They are faster and more lethal, and their melee attacks and grabs are more accurate. If someone grabs you with other enemies nearby, he'll hold you so someone else can get a hit in. When they get knocked down, they don't lay there for a minute before slowly getting back up, and when running away they have an easier time keeping up with you. They don't get stunned as easily with headshots, and even going for a melee move isn't as safe. You still have iframes, but because the hitbox is more realistic, enemies behind you or to the side can hit you when the animation is done. If the only new addition was being able to move and shoot, enemies could easily overwhelm you, but they also added the ability to crouch and parry attacks. Crouching lets you dodge a few moves reliably without having to time a parry. It's mainly good for grab attacks, but plenty of times I crouched a grab and it still got me, so it's not as consistent as I would like it to be. The biggest new addition to the game's core combat is the parry. It adds a whole new layer to the game because now every melee attack isn't something that can only be avoided, and it makes the enemies holding different weapons feel even more different from each other, because now enemies with different weapons have different movesets that you need to learn the timing of to parry. Someone with a pitchfork stands out more now because they have a new charging attack that you want to look out for. Since enemies no longer get stunned 100% of the time with a headshot, the parry is the new best way to save your bullets besides running away. But because it's balanced, you're not overwhelming the enemies with parries like you could overwhelm them with stuns and kicks in the original. A perfect parry takes less durability than one that's not timed correctly, and using the knife in general to hit enemies will also take some durability. If you get grabbed, you can use the knife to get out instantly, but doing so will use a lot of the knife's HP. There's a real risk/reward system to using the knife now, and on professional difficulty, you're only allowed to do perfect parries, which makes the game more difficult in a great way that isn't just making the enemies do more damage. If I had to sum up overall why I think the remake's gameplay is better than the original, it's simply just because of way better balancing between all of the game's mechanics, without taking away of any of the aspects that make Resident Evil 4 fun to play. The game is still about controlling the space with good use of your weapons and stunning the enemies to go for melee moves and conserve ammo, but now there's a higher skill ceiling because when you're playing the game the way it's meant to be played, you're not an overwhelming force with iframes, a kick with a crazy hitbox, a knife with infinite durability, going against enemies that can barely even get back up after getting knocked on the ground. There's plenty of other changes that I think make the gameplay experience better as well, like the knife itself having a moveset, Ashley not having a health bar, the bosses being designed better, more enemy variety, and how the visual and audio upgrades add to the weight of combat, making it feel more satisfying.
Oh my, look at how slumped he is!
I think the point's been made that yes, the remake is an improvement over the original when you look at it analytically, but does that mean it's more fun than the original? For me, the answer is also yes, but I can see how someone can look at these changes and think it's straying too far from the original's core design, and because of that, feel like this game is only Resident Evil 4 in name alone, so comparing it to the original is unfair. Kind of like comparing God of War 3 to God of War Ragnarok. Both great games, just in very different ways. But that's it. That's the end of the video. I didn't want it to be a long one. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said, and if you played the original, let me know if you like it more or less than the remake. Thanks for watching.